You're being programmed.
So this video is about London, both Londons, the Bank of England, and anything else I can find that's cool that I can show you.
Bank of England here, and it even says here on this pyramid thing, it says, close to this panel is the Royal Exchange, which contains a new retail development, Mansion House, the official home of the Lord Mayor of London during his year in office, and the Bank of England, founded in 1694 as a private company, is now exercising the functions of a state bank. It says it here. Get close to it. It's here. Where my finger is. Bank of England, founded in 1694 as a private company, and now exercising the functions of a state bank. It doesn't say it's a government-owned state bank. It clearly says in black and white, founded in 1694 as a private company and now exercising the functions of a state bank. That is a private company that issues notes that are worthless bits of paper and that are backed up by nothing.
Sorry about the clarity of that, but it's the best it can do. It's intriguing though, isn't it? Because it's about the Bank of England, and I'll cover that a bit later. But what intrigued me was the panel outside the pyramid, the silver pyramid, talking about the Bank of England. Well, as you can see, I believe it was put up for the Queen's Silver Jubilee in 1977. Now, most of them, there was just panels or basically footpaths. It was for her walk, a Jubilee walk. This was the only one made into a pyramid, right at the heart of the City of London. That just makes me go, straight away. And as you can see, it's the Royal Exchange one, and it went into detail what that guy was talking about. But most of them were just silver plaques on the floor, showing you the path to walk for the Queen. Now, there's not many panels left. There's an odd one there about, and this one's near the Thames, just showing you the route of the walk. But what's intriguing is, when I was looking into this, I found, 2001 Space Odyssey, the black monolith. Originally, it was going to be a different colour, and you can see it on the hotel behind. Now, it blew me away this because it got repurposed for the Queen's Silver Jubilee by a sculptor, and basically Stanley Kubrick turned it down. So what they did was they made it into a motif of the crystal of the crown, the crystal crown, which I just went, wow. And as you can see, it's near enough 11 foot wide. That just blew me away. And here you can see it a bit closer up, and then in a minute even closer. So basically this was going to be in 2001 Space Odyssey, not with the Queen's carving on, but clear perspex, and he went for the black one, so it got repurposed for the Queen. London has gone by many names. After these images, I'll show you just a few. Augusta is one. Londiniensium, Londinio, Londiniaci and Londinium are just a few. You've also had Londonburg, shortened to London, which I found that in Assassin's Creed. But the one that basically named that makes me go and wow is this. Llyn Dain. Sounds like it, doesn't it? Now that's Welsh for the pool of the Thames. That's what the website said, so don't scream out if you're Welsh. another name, and this is the Pacific name, Lan Dayan. This made me wow. Now this referring to the temple of Diana, which was supposedly to have stood on this location. Yep, St. Paul's Cathedral. Now Diane or Dianus is associated with Janos. But here's a few images. You just saw the new image of St. Paul's. This is one of the old images of old St. Paul's. There's been a few. It's been wooden, it's different things as you would expect. But these is just a few images from old St. Paul's. This one's from the north. This one's from the east. So you can see how it has changed even from this to the what we have currently with the dome. This is from the west. And this is inside on the left. And in the old one, the nave or Paul's Walk is on the right. So you can see it's significantly, it does remind you of it, but it has changed a lot. Seems longer. And then to finish up, you have the choir and the stalls on the right and the choir on the right. Or was it left or right? But you can just see how it has changed, and is a very beautiful piece of architecture and obviously building. Right guys, so what you see now is the entrance to the Mercers. Now Mercers are one of the liveries of London. There's 12 in all, very ominous in that number. And this is another location for the Bank of England. Before its current location, as we all know it, it used to be at Mercers Hall. Now the very influential guild. And I'm just going to show you a few pictures of the guild, and it is well intriguing, and it just shows you the depths of the City of London goes. So Bank of England, where we all know it is now situated, I've showed you even a picture at the beginning. This was at this location before they basically built the Bank of England. And here's a few images of inside the Mercers Guild, the Mercers Hall is in London. And what's intriguing me is that I didn't know they have a Mercers Maiden. Now I'm not going to read this all out, but it's basically talking about how any building that has this symbol of this lady on this maiden, they own it or run it. It's basically the property. And as you can see from the image, here she is. Now she goes from many effigies, many descriptions, but she's basically wears a crown or a necklace and long hair, and she's known as the Anonymous Lady, and she's been a symbol of the Mercers Company since at least the 15th century. She appears on the coat of arms and on any building owned or funded by the organisation, which turns out to be quite a few. And that's just a quick answer on that. So you can see how different types it is. Representing the Anonymous Lady, the Mercers Maiden. She appears on the building, so anytime you see this in London, you know it's owned by the Mercers. Now here's their crest, their flag, and what you notice underneath it says Hono Deo, which means honour God. And they're all over the City of London. Lampposts, everything. It's crazy, isn't it? And these things that people will walk past every day and not know the true meaning. They're everywhere. So they're very influential, this guild. One of the most famous people that's been in the guild was Dick Whittington. Now he was 4 times London Mayor, and a lot of people have heard of him throughout history. Well, he left all his money to the Mercers. Now the Mercers are just one of 12 livery companies, guilds, secret guilds. You can call them secret guilds, whatever you want, but it is a type of a secret society, a brotherhood. Now another one of the locations of the Bank of England was the old Grocers Hall. Now as you can see, this is a predecessor of the present Bank of England. Now this location has been bombed, burned, and the hall's been changed maybe 5 or 6 times. So you just have to take that into account when I show you pictures, and some of them look different because it's been redesigned a lot of times. And again, you can just see the wealth behind it. Coming up is just showing you the location. Currently it's right opposite the Bank of England, and as you can see, there's the Queen Mother. She's an honorary freeman of the grocers. And here's his, to finish off this section, here's another one of the grocers hall interpretation. Designs the buildings as it is. It's an intriguing place. It does remind you of the Bank of England, doesn't it, how it's designed. Right, guys. Right, I'm going to read this long and windy bit out, guys, so I have to do it because it's some good information, and it's what the Great 12 livery companies of the City of London. It's funny that it's 12, isn't it? Like the apostles and different things like that, and how many 12s. It's just intriguing, that number, isn't it, that they chose. And if you think about it, 12 plus the Crown Corporation would be 13. So as you can go, great. It's not the greatest image because I've had to enlarge it so you can actually read it on your screens at home. So it is a little bit blurry. It's only because I've put it on a great magnification. So there's the 12 great livery companies. There's the Mercers, as you can see here. And then there's the grocers that we've just been talking about. And if I went in to talk about every other one, apart from this, it'd be a long time. So I thought, you know what, I'll just do a couple. And then I'll get down to the nitty-gritty of reading all this out. So the livery companies of the City of London have played an integral part in the development of the city. So much so that even today the activities of the various liveries are intertwined with the daily life of the square mile. Obviously that's the City of London, it's known as the square mile. Often beginning life in medieval times as a loose association of tradesmen with similar interests, they grew into what was essentially trade bodies. The liveries grew to become so important that if you wanted to work in a particular trade in the city, then you would needed to do your time first as an apprentice, learning your trade, accountable to your master for many years before becoming a free man of the city after the apprenticeship was completed. The companies governed who could trade. Membership of one was essential if you wanted to make your own way in life. So you can see how significant they are. Becoming a free man was important, as once awarded such status you could ply your trade and become your own man. Until such time, though, all apprentices would have been at the whim of the master of the company. It was those decisions as to their future which could have been of great importance. Right, let's move and scroll down. So the order of precedence. In 1516, the livery companies were given an order of precedence or precedence by the Lord Mayor of the time. The precedence list was basically ordered around wealth, and some of the companies were incredibly wealthy and very powerful. At the time there were only 48 companies, but the ranks had now grown to 108 in that square mile. Out of the original 48, a great 12 were created. It's amazing how they love to use that number. There were 12 most powerful and influential companies in the City of London, controlling all sorts of aspects of daily life and trade. And then it just goes on how the purpose of this post was to find and photograph all the great livery companies of the city. So this is what I'm going to read out. So number one that we started to know was the Mercers Company. And the word mercer comes from the Latin term for merchandise. Now, if you remember Mercadosia's video, when it shows you about merchandise, and commerce is linked to trafficking. So people enjoyed that video. So if you've not saw that, please go and check it out. It's just called the Caduceus. So it's the Latin term for merchandise, and the mercers were generally traders. The mercery was a market area which existed around the Church of St Mary Le Bow in the City of London. According to the Worshipful Company of Mercers themselves, a mercer might have run a shop or a market stall selling fabrics and accessories. The mercers might have also been traders who moved from town to town selling goods. The present Mercers Hall is in Ironmonger Lane in London. So I briefly showed you about a famous mercer. Another famous mercer is Sir John Dee, or John Dee. If I pronounce that right, I've got it the right way. I've got John in my head for some reason. John Dee was obviously the Queen and very influential in that time. So there is, I showed you a photograph of that before, it's just to the left there. So the second one, you notice the Mercers are number one. Then the grocers are number 2. They're the 2 included because that's where the location of the Bank of England was before the original, well, not the original, where they are now was built. So originally known as the Ancient Guild of Pepperers. The name was changed in 1376 to the Company of Grocers. Its first royal charter was granted in 1428 by Henry VIII. The original Pepperers were responsible for garbling, which was the prevention of the impairment of spices and drugs. They were also responsible for the king's beam, from which goods were weighed, and so become responsible for weights and measures. The term grocer comes from the Latin grossiarius. This means a person who works with large amounts of trade goods. The origin of the word grocery comes from here. The present Grocers Hall is on Princes Street in London. So you can see that little building. I showed you all this before, but remember, they have had about five halls because it's been damaged, bombed, burnt, you name it, it's happened to this place, which is intriguing itself. So number 3 is the Drapers Company. The Drapers would have traded in wool and cloth. They had powers to regulate the wool and cloth trade in the city. It controlled the sale of cloth's fur, and determined the unit of measurement by which wool and cloth was sold. The word drapery comes from the Latin drapus and is a general term referring to cloth and textiles. The company itself had its first royal charter issued in 1364. The Drapers Hall is on Throgmorton Street in London. So you can go see it in image. The Drapers Hall. 2911. I'm not saying nothing. Right, number 4. The Fishmongers Company. The Fishmongers were granted their first royal charter by Edward I in 1272. At one time they enjoyed a monopoly in trade of fish in the city, as fish was such a staple part of the diet and the city began intimately connected to the Thames and the sea. This increased the influence of the company significantly. Now the company still maintains links with its past and provides support for a number of fish and fisheries related organisations. The Fishmongers Hall is on the city side of London Bridge at the bank of the Thames. So it looks like it's near the Shard. I think that's called a Shard, isn't it, if I remember. Sitting on the London Bridge with a great view of the Shard. There we go. The worshipful companies are the Fishmongers. Have you noticed how most of these now had monopoly in the time and now they're just organisations with influence and control? I'm surprised this wasn't number 1, but you know what I mean, it just shows you how prolific number 1 was. Number 5, the Goldsmith Company. The goldsmiths were responsible for testing the quality of gold and silver and regulated the trade of the goldsmith. The word hallmark comes from the time when craftsmen were required to bring their goods to the hall for assaying and marking. It was also responsible, and still is, for checking the quality of the coins produced by the Royal Mint. This is the process called the trial of the pyx. The name, or pyx or pyx, the name pyx refers to the chest in which the coins were transported. It derives from the pyx chamber in Westminster Abbey, where the chests were kept. The trial is named after the metal plate against which the coins are tested against. The Goldsmiths Hall is on Foster Lane in London. It's just so intriguing. It's like a different world, isn't it? And there's the Goldsmiths Hall. You can see the opulence of this one compared to the other ones. It's not as low key, is it? And that's what they say as well. Goldsmiths Hall on Foster Lane has an imposing facade. Determining precedence or precedence, pardon for that pronunciation, I just have trouble with certain words, must have been tricky. For positions 6 and 7, the issue became insurmountable, especially with feelings running high and honour at stake. The Skinners and the Merchant Taylors had a history. In 1484 it turned to violence during the Lord Mayor's River procession. With such a delicate scenario, a solution was devised which meant that the Skinners and the Merchant Taylors changed position every year. It is thought that the phrase at 6s and 7s came about because of this dispute. Wow, I did not know that. Wow, you learn something new every day and makes sense. So at 6 and 7, who change regularly every year, is the Merchant Taylors Company, alternating with the Skinners for position 7 every year, so backwards and forwards. The merchant tailors were given the first royal charter by Edward III in 1327, initially an association of citizens who worked as tailors and linen armourers. The company grew to such an extent that it controlled the tailoring trade. Linen armourers made the padded tunics worn underneath suits of armour. These were important pieces of clothing in the city, often at the heart of warfare. The Merchant Taylors' Hall is in Threadneedle Street, quite appropriately in the city of London. Threadneedle Street is also where the Bank of England is now, I believe. And there you go. The front of the Merchant Taylors' Hall on Threadneedle Street. Right, let's carry on. So we've just done 6s and 7s, now 7 and 6s. The Skinners Company. The Skinners had their origin in the fur trade, which back in medieval times was an extremely luxury item. Expensive as it was to import, it was a status item and it was strictly controlled. Different types of fur were restricted to different classes. Ermine and sable, for example, was only for royalty and the aristocracy. Common folk had to make do with less exotic furs from rabbit or cat. The company was granted its first royal charter in 1327 by Edward III. Skinners Hall is at 8 Dowergate Hill in London. So you can see there's the front of the hall. And it's in Cannon Street. Why is that name familiar? Maybe something. Do you know when you have something on the tip of your tongue? But it's intriguing about these guilds. I know they've changed the main purpose, but you can see the influence, and it's still to this today, really, isn't it? Number 8, the Haberdasheries Company. Haberdasheries or haberdashers sold things such as ribbons, gloves, pins, caps and hats. The company first received its royal charter in 1448. The haberdasheries were joined by the hat makers fraternity in 1502. This meant that there were two groups representing haberdashers or small wares and haberdashers of hats. Haberdashers Hall can be found 18 West Smithfield in London, and as you can see there is a guild flag flying high at the front of the hall. Number 9, the Salters Company. Salt was an important commodity in medieval times as it was used extensively to preserve meat and fish. The importance of salt as a commodity goes back years, and the word sal is the origin of the word salary, as Roman soldiers were given salt rations. Other uses for the salt included cleaning, dyeing fabric, bleaching, degreasing, deherring and softening leathers. Salters were experts in the dry salting of meat and fish. They would also have been aware of many other ways in which salt could be a benefit in medieval daily life. The company received its first license from Richard II in 1394. Salters Hall is on 4th Street in London. And obviously it looks a modern building, so these have moved. And I believe, as it says there, Salters Hall, is seen from St Appleby Gardens, Applehage, is next to the rare surviving section of the old city wall. Number 10, the Ironmongers Company. Originally known as the Ferroners, the Ironmongers Company regulated the quality of iron, which would have been used extensively in the wheels of carts used to transport goods. They were given their first royal charter in 1463 by Edward IV. After the iron industry moved into the North and the Midlands, the Ironmongers Company shifted track to works within philanthropy and education. Nestled within the Barbican estate, the Ironmongers Company can be found on Shaftesbury Place, a little alley off Aldersgate. Just intriguing me. It's like another world, isn't it? Let me just look at this architecture. I know it's blown up and it's a bit warm for you, but obviously that's because I've just, enlarged it. But you can see the different types of architecture and stone used. It's just wow. The Ironmongers Company is close to the Museum of London and is a good contrast to the Barbican estate. Number 11. The Vintners Company. Vintners controlled the important wine trade in medieval England, and its first charter of 1363 gave it a monopoly for trade with Gascony, as wine made up 1/3 of all the imports at the time. Then controlling this trade route to major wine production centre was important. Today the Vintners Company still retains the right to sell wine without licence in the City of London, but a lot of its other purposes changed to more charitable works. The Vintners Hall can be found on Upper Thames Street in London. You can just see, they don't do as much as they do, but it screams like a mafia based secret guild. Only every one of them, Vintners Place. Consider they don't do much. They're not doing too bad, are they? The architecture, and obviously it looks like modernist, don't they? I know, like other people talk about it, it looks like it's just like, it's just like moles. Intriguing, it just so intrigues me. And number 12, the Cloth Workers Company. The Cloth Workers were formed following the amalgamation of the Fullers and the Shearmen in 1528. Fullers were people who repaired cloth ready to use by removing the impurities such as the grease and the dirt. The process of fullering would also thicken the cloth. Shearmen were finishers of the cloth and would further prepare the material, ensuring that the surface and the material was given and loose fibres removed. The Clothmakers Hall is on Dunstan Court in Mincing Lane. And there you go, there's a crest and logo. It's just intriguing, it just blows me away. And that's one of the entrances to the Dunstan Court. It's just intriguing, isn't it, guys? And if you want to read this yourself, it's on inspiringscity.com, the Great 12 liveries. It's intriguing. I'll just go right to the top for you so you can just see. Again, let's all get... Woo! Slow down, ball. There you go. There's the Great 12 liveries, and these are the crests of each company, which is intriguing itself. So hopefully you just like me this. I thought, you know what, I'm going to put it in anyway because it just gives off an eerie feeling, doesn't it, of how these companies ruled and run London, and they still do today. Yeah, they're saying it's more charitable work, and they're in these big buildings. It's just like, you can just see the influence. And like I said, there's famous people who have been members of each of these guilds, these liveries, and as you can see, 12, and we know what number that is associated with. A lot of things it's associated with. So hopefully you've enjoyed that a little bit. Right, guys. The boundary of the City of London is guarded by dragons, and here's just a few. They also have hidden dragons situated in London, and here's just a few again. So this is Holborn Viaduct, as you can see. But what's intriguing me when I was looking at this video, I found that Edison had some stuff in regard to building like a power plant under the ground into the viaduct, as you can see here. And then he had the offices and whatnot at the side of it in a shop floor, so you'd access it and then you go below the ground, as you can see. And here's a shop at the side. I just thought I had to include that just as something intriguing while I was looking into this video. And before, you heard me talking about Marylebone Church in regard to the Mercers or the other guild. Now just look what's at the top of the church, the dragon. Now the dragon, which forms the weathercock on top of the spire, is 221 feet 6 inches above the pavement. That adds up to 11. That is crazy. Now, is there anything in that, or is it just a coincidence? Anyway, it talks about how a dragon's wing with the cross is used as a city's crest. The wings of the dragons which form the supporters of the city arms similarly charged in 1820, 1877 and 1902. The dragon was taken down for regilding. There was an old prophecy which attributed erroneously by many to Mother Shipton, that if when this dragon and the grasshopper from the vein of the Royal Exchange met, the streets of London would flow with blood. In 1820, the two insects were both taken down for repair and met at a workshop in neighbourhood of St Luke's lunatic asylum. Blood did not flow, but the times were somewhat parlous, and now that means bad or dangerous. So that's just intriguing, isn't it, that even the guild near the church near the guild, and it was heavily influenced, has a dragon on top of its spire. I just thought that was too cool not to include. Right, so what you're seeing on screen is a map of the City of London, and you can see some blue or lilac markers. Now what they actually are the actual location of the dragon markers that we was talking about at the beginning. Now they're numbered correctly. Now I'm going to count them, and you're going to be wowed at just how many there is. It's just wow. So let's start at the top. You have 1. We have 2. We have 3 and 4 at the bottom. 5, 6 and 7, 8, 9 and 10, 11, 12, and lastly but not leastly, or leastly but lastly, whatever way it is 13. And that is a wow to me, because obviously we have 12 liveries companies, but we also have the Crown Corporation. That would make 13. Now I'm not going to do a little bit on how many 13 symbology there is, because we know this is about the City of London, so I just thought I'd share this with you. There's 13 dragon markers. It's just wow, isn't it? It is to me, so hopefully you guys are the same, like wow, it's in your face. 13 dragon markers for the boundary of City of London. So, while we've got maps up, I thought I'd show you this. It won't be new for most of you, but some of you will be. Have a look at this. This is all the boroughs of London. Highlighted there in white is the City of London. And why is it in white, and why is it not named? Because it isn't a part of London. All those boroughs are Greater London. The City of London is a separate entity, and it's run by the Crown Corporation. People still today do not realise this, and obviously these videos and other videos that people do are there to highlight this big stat that the City of London has nothing to do with London and the country, yet it runs it. Anyway, so how many boroughs is there? And I'll read this little stat out for you there. This is the list of local authority districts within Greater London, including 32 London boroughs and the City of London. 32 add 1 is 33. That's a weird number. I wonder where they got that from. That isn't it. What just made me laugh was that, but this next bit. The London boroughs were all created on the 1st of April 1965. Upon creation, 12 were designated inner London boroughs, and the remaining 20 were designated outer London boroughs. So that is the 1st of April. April's Fool Day, all these boroughs were created. And as I've showed you in many videos, who has every first day of every month is connected to that flag and St. George. None other than Janos. Strange that, isn't it? So as you can see, 32 and 33 from the York and Scottish Rite. One has a crown, which is 33, the 32 doesn't. Intriguing, and 32 London boroughs plus the crown is 33, and the 33 has the crown. And it also holds and grasps a sword. Well, have a look at the City of London crest. It has a sword. I believe it's supposed to have chopped off St Paul's head, but that is just one of the rumours. And in Latin underneath, as Domain dirige nos, which means Lord, direct or guide us. So it's intriguing, isn't it? And I might get into a bit later why they do use this flag, because it isn't English. They borrowed it from Genoa. What's coming up now is this information on the Bank of England. I had already filmed this little section. It was about 20 odd minutes, and I thought that was far too long for you guys. So I'm just going to edit it to just some little bit of interesting information on the bank. Right guys, let's have a look at the Bank of England. So if you want to actually look at this yourself, just go to bankofengland.co.uk, and it's a history from their page itself. So I'm just going to read this out because I think it's the best one that I could find, and it's not too long and winding. and you know, in so many cases, I don't want to be causing more of that. So obviously, here we go. So I'll put a picture up of the bank charter on the screen now, and I'll ghost out so you can just see it and then read what I'm reading out. So in 27th of July 1694, the Bank of England was founded. The Bank of England began as a private bank that would act as a banker to the government. It was primarily founded to fund the war effort against France. The King, the Queen at the time, William and Mary, were two of the original stockholders. The original Royal Charter of 1694, granted by King William and Queen Mary, explained that the bank was founded to promote the public good and benefit of our people. In essence, this is still used today in our current mission statement, promoting the good of the people of the United Kingdom by maintaining monetary and financial stability. As we know it's a private organisation. The Bank of England opened for business on 1st of August 1694 in temporary accommodation in the Mercers Hall in Cheapside. It had a staff of 17 clerks and 2 gatekeepers. Remember, every first day is Janus, basically, and you'll see a lot of them in regard to the bank. So let's just move up. I'm starting the opposite way around. From the site, you would start up from the recent all the way down, but I thought it was better to start the other way around. So Sir John Holborn becomes the first governor of the Bank of England. Remember, what is John but a derivative of Janos? If you see it, guys, I'll point it out. The Bank of England's early years under Sir John Holborn were dominated by the government's pressing demands for financial and the issue of new coinage. The bank also started a conventional banking business, accepting deposits from the public. Between 1994 and 2014, Sir John Holborn was honoured on the £50 notes, and you can see it at the side. Now what we'll do is I'll put the crest here while it's blank, but in 1720 the bank had a competition, the South Sea. Now it was a fiasco, I believe. Some people at the time, well, obviously at the time they couldn't say it, but now they're saying it was like the early starts of basically like a Ponzi scheme. Anyway, so South Sea Bubble, the first financial crisis in the Bank of England's history. In 1711, the South Sea Company was founded. Remember, 1711, but it wasn't just any 1711, it was January 1711. Wait, yeah, Janos is January. Add January is 1 to the 1711, you will get 11. Crazy. But just don't go there, guys, because accidentally the founders of the South Sea Company were called John Aylesbury. He was actually the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who lives at number 11. And John Blunt. Wait, didn't you just say John was a derivative of Janos? Yep. So the South Sea Company, founded in January, numbers add to 11, were founded by two Johns. Bit like the Masonic two St. Johns. Strange, that, innit? And basically they were slavers company, guys, trading in slaves, and they wanted to use that to help the so-called crisis at the bank. But actually it went worse, it crashed. And what you're seeing on the screen is John Lazenby's, the Chancellor's, grave memorial. And just look at it, what do you see? The caduceus, the pattern that I've not long been talking about in obviously the video on the caduceus. I just thought that was a wow to include in this. Anyway, so I'll carry on. So, threatened the bank's position as the government's banker and the owner of the national debt. They actually bought X amount of the government's debt at the time. So, the South Sea Company exchanged loans to the government for trading rights in Spanish-controlled South Seas, now known as South America. At the time, Britain was in the midst of a war with Spain. Very little trading occurred, but the South Sea Company set its sights on servicing the national debt, which was largely the Bank of England's job at the time. In 1720, the South Sea Company was granted part of the national debt, and its stock rose dramatically. This caused a frenzy investment in its stock, but prices eventually crashed and thousands of people were ruined. That's just throughout, the history. And hopefully I remember to put the crest or the logo of the South Sea Company here for you guys to actually see. The Bank of England moved to Threadneedle Street, and remember, it's known as the Old Lady. And hopefully I have an idea, I don't know if I've said already, depending on the way I've edited it, but pretend I've not said it if I've not. You saw the anonymous lady of the Mercers Guild. Now you have the Bank of England known as the Old Lady, and I believe I know who that is, and I'm going to do a little section on that later, guys, for you. So the Bank of England moved to Threadneedle Street, where it actually is now. In 1734, the Bank of England moved to the site on Threadneedle Street, where it still stands today. Slowly over the next 100 years or so, the bank bought adjacent properties until it owned the entire 3.5 acre site in the heart of the City of London. Our first architect, George Sampson, created the first purpose-built bank in the UK on this site. It was said to be a Palladian in style, identified by its symmetry and classic design. Payment by the bank to contractors for the balance of the new building in 1734 was £268, 17 shillings and 2 pence. And this is architect John Soane, and he was one of the UK's greatest architects, began his 45-year career at the Bank of England. He extended the bank until it had doubled in size to 3.5 acres and eventually enclosed it with a windowless wall in 1828. The structure of Soane's bank remained more or less untouched until it was demolished. A new building erected by architect Sir Herbert Baker between 1925 and 1939. However, Sir John's outer wall remains in place to this day. The minutes of the meeting held by St John Soane and plant pictures of the architect, the Bank of England archives. So there is the Old Lady of Threadneedle. It was a cartoon done by, what was it? It says somewhere. The famous cartoon denotes William Pitt the Younger attempting to woo the gold off an old lady representing the Bank of England. So I'll actually put this up bigger on the screen for you any guys who want to actually look at it. So 1797, the restriction period. In 1797, France declared war on Britain when a small French force landed on mainland Britain. Fears of invasion quickly spread. During this time, the public rushed to the Bank of England to convert their banknotes into gold, which was possible at the time. The amount of gold held by the bank dropped from 16 million to just 2 million. To try and preserve the already depleted gold reserves, the Prime Minister, William Pitt the Younger, placed a Privy Council order on the Bank of England, ordering it to stop paying notes in gold. The famous cartoon denotes what I just said, attempting to woo the gold off the old lady representing the Bank of England. So it was crazy. From this date on, the Bank of England became known as the Old Lady of Threadneedle Street. Isn't it funny that this old lady and the lady by the Mercers Guild seem to be connected, and I believe on who they are. And like I said, I'll show you a bit later. So what you can see now is forgeries in the restriction period. This might be classed as like a satire that was done, but still, let's count how many people are hanging in the picture. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 people hanging in this picture. That may be just a coincidence. So, the restriction period from 1792 to 1821 temporarily removed the Bank of England's obligation to exchange banknotes for equivalent value of gold, which we were basically just talking about. It was brought in due to a shortage of gold caused by the overprinting of banknotes. This period provided the conditions in which forgeries could thrive because the Bank of England issued low denomination notes, £1, £2, for the first time to compensate for the shortage of gold. These notes were handled by people who were not used to paper currency and who were often illiterate. These quickly became the natural dupes of the forgers. Forgery of the Bank of England banknotes were considered a capital offence, and over 300 people were hanged during this period. The Bank of England archive contains much of the Freshfields prison correspondence between the Bank of England and prisoners held on forgery charges. Before the restriction period, forgers were more likely to attempt to alter the banknotes already in circulation rather than print new ones. One example was an attempt to change £10 note into £20 note, doubling its value. Threadneedle Street rebuilt. Between 1925 and 1939, Bank of England architect Sir Herbert Baker demolished what has become known as the Old Bank, or Soane's Bank. I think Soane actually did a bit to the Masonic Hall in London, City of London also. Sir Herbert built a new headquarters for the Bank of England on the same 3.5 acre Threadneedle site. The old Bank of England had mostly been no more than 3 stories high. The new building stood 7 stories above ground and dropped 3 below to fit in the extra staff needed to tackle the bank's rapidly increasing amount of work and responsibility. And in no particular order, here's some images of the extra refab they did from 1928 to 31 or 35. Have a guess when the oculus or the rotunda was taken down, how many caryatids, which are supports, were taken down. They took down 12 caryatids, just like the livery companies. 1931, the gold standard linked to the value of the UK currency directly to gold and effectively enabled people to exchange Bank of England banknotes for the equivalent value of gold. In September 1931, the UK suspended the gold standard. Confidence in sterling had collapsed, and the ensuing run on sterling meant the Bank of England lost most of its reserves. Wartime bank forgeries. In an attempt to destabilise the British currency, during the war, the Nazis introduced forged £5 notes into Britain. These forged notes were printed in Sachsenhausen concentration camp outside Berlin. The project was codenamed Operation Bernhard. At this point in time, the design of our value banknotes from £5 up to 1,000 had not changed for almost a century. Got £1,000 note. The way they were produced had always continued unimproved, but the results that they were copied extremely successfully by the Germans. Because I bet you could just photocopy them type of things now, couldn't you? Almost 9 million notes with a face value of 134 million were printed by the Nazis, a figure that represents more than 10% of the total banknotes that were in circulation at the time. Emergency measures were taken to slow this down, including the 1940 special blue £1 note, which is the first time we used a metallic thread in banknote in 1943. We temporarily stopped issuing denominations greater than £5 to tackle this threat of counterfeiting. What's funny is I have in my possession a 13th century coin that was made by the king at a time in Flanders to do the same thing, but it's a silver hammered coin. It's crazy, and it's like 700 years old. The Bank of England is nationalised, it says. Throughout our history, we have always seen ourselves as a public institution acting in the national interest. Although the bank was privately owned for a long time, our activities were determined by the government and legislation. When the bank was nationalised in 1946, it meant that it was now owned by the government rather than private stockholders. Shame they didn't tell the people who did the modern signage outside saying it's a private bank. Hey ho. This gave the government the power to appoint the bank's governors and directors and to issue directions to the bank. To the date, the government's power to issue directions has not been used. Oh, that's funny, isn't it? You bring supposedly this into so you can pick the directors, but you've never done it. Sounds like you've never actually been in charge. Here we have 1960, the Queen Elizabeth II, we know who she is, becomes the first monarch to appear on a Bank of England note. That surprised me. What you're talking 1960. On 17th of March 1960, we issued our first banknote featuring Queen Elizabeth II. Up until this point, Britannia had always been the character to appear on our banknotes. We have since used a number of images of the Queen on our banknotes, and the portraits have come to an important anti-counterfeiting feature. This is because people are more likely to notice slight differences in facial features than the differences of images of inanimate objects. This is what I didn't know, and I'll be honest when I don't know. First giants printed, the notes were called giants. In 1968, we printed our first giant banknote because I believe they were big. I've seen them in films and different things, and they take half an hour to unfold them. So that's why they call the giants, with a face value of 1 million. So there's a £1 million note. They are printed on a different style from other notes and will never leave the Bank of England building. Similar to Titans, worth 100 million, they play an important role in the banking value of Scottish and Northern Ireland banknotes. So you have bank notes called giants and Titans. That just made me go, wow. So again, look at that. Giants and we have Titans. That takes me back. I remember I'm not that old, but you know what I mean, I still remember them. The £20 note, it became, so there we go, 9th of September 1970, the Bank of England issues its first pictorial note. The £20 note issued in 1970 featured William Shakespeare on the back, along with the famous balcony scene from Romeo and Juliet. It marked the beginning of a brand new series of banknotes, Series D, featuring a historical figure on the back. Portraits and highly detailed machine engraving were blended into historical scenes, making them difficult to copy. The Shakespeare £20 note was the work of Harry Norman Eccleston MBE, the bank's first full-time artist designer, and his assistant Roger Withington. We've just looked at a brief history of the bank. Let's have a look inside the bank. And one of the first wows to me is the St. George. and that's going to come up at the end, but the big connection that I've made there. Right guys, so we'll leave you with a few images of inside the bank. Sic vos non vobis means for you but not yours. How ominous is that? Notice 2 of the caryatids in the museum. As you can see, there's only 2 left. I think some others are in some other museums. Here's King William and Queen Mary supposedly set up the bank charter that I mentioned before. Have a look at this, caduceus at both ends. That is a wow to me. It's like they're showing you the both sacred areas of the pineal and the sacrum. It's just breathtaking, that. Remember my caduceus video, and this is in the Bank of England, so it's crazy how it all ties in together. But I could not include this. This is Janos that appears in the Bank of England, and if you take a close look, they've used the head of the governor at the time, Montague Norman. But look at the constellations. There's 12 stars, like the 12 liveries, but they say it's a constellation, the plough on the left and the Southern Cross on the right. Now in Bhagavata Purana scripture, this area is known as the Great Circle of Time. Now this just blew me away, absolutely blew me away. And then obviously the cross is known as the Southern Cross, and if you remember, it's a red star, giant red star. It's red in nature, so just take that on board. You have a circle and a red cross. Now Janos is known as Uberos 2. I'll show you many videos there, and it's a circle, obviously the repeat of time, endless time. So I'll put a circle on the screen, and then remember the Southern Cross is a red cross. What does it look like, guys? That is crazy, but isn't that crazy that they mentioned the circle of time and the Southern Cross, which is red, is the Genoese, the English flag. It was the first image used on Britannia. As you can see, it's moved to a Britain flag now, a Union Jack. And here's the bank in Genoa, showing you again the St. George's flag, the Genoese flag, and here's the crest. Notice anyone on top? I've showed you this many times, but tell me, how is this possible? Is this the connection? The 2 constellations that they use in the Janus aspect in the Bank of England turns into the St. George's flag, the Genoese flag, which was the first banking central bank ever, and capitalism started from there. And just look, the crests match. It just blows me away, this, and hopefully guys you can see the wow in this, because I can. So the Bank of England is associated with gold, coins, the minting of coins, making of bank notes. and obviously the Queen visits her a lot to see her little gold and little sausage fingers also. But I had an idea. They also have an icon there called Moneta. Now they've associated it with Juno Moneta. Now I believe the Mercer's Maiden, the anonymous lady, is Juno Moneta. Now Juno Moneta is money and mint. So it goes together. Now have a look at Juno Moneta on the left, and then obviously the different types of descriptions of the Mercer's Maiden. They're very, very similar. But here's the other killer, because we have Janos in the Bank of England. Also here it's actually saying that Juno was actually married to Janos, not Jupiter. Now that just blew me away. So if you want to read this out in full, please just pause it and then just read away. But it just blows me away. Now Moneta is memory, but when they had Juno Moneta, it's money and the mint. In Rome, in their temple, it's where they minted the Roman coins. So you can see how the Bank of England, Janos, Juno Moneta matched together, and it could be a possible person for who the anonymous lady, the Mercer's Maiden, could be. Juno Moneta. Right guys, I thought I'd share this with you. As you can see, this is a map of central London, and highlighted is actual Bank of England. Now can you see what I see? It'd be very obvious once you get your eyes adjusted to the screen, but I see the Bank of England at the top and a pyramid or a triangle underneath. Now it's not exact, but this just reminded me of this what's appearing on the screen now, the so-called all-seeing eye. Now it could just be an accident, but I'll ghost it and I'll just put the image over the screen, and you can see where I'm getting at. The hat, you know, the little mini pyramid eye bit would be the Bank of England, and then the pyramid triangle underneath. You can see what I'm trying to get at. I just thought, you know what, I'm going to share this with you and see if anyone else sees it. Hopefully you don't think I'm all, you know, starving, crazy, insane and seeing things. I just saw a pyramid with another object at the top, a bit like the all-seeing eye. Just in that triangle that we're talking about, there is the Museum of Mithras. So it's a Mithraeum or Mithriatic temple, and it's just right there. It's been moved a little bit, but it was originally found in the 60s near the Walbrook area. Now the Walbrook means of the Welsh, comes from the word Walla, meaning of the Welsh, and obviously Brook meaning brook. So there's another little bit of tie into the Welsh, like the beginning when I was talking about Diana's temple. So in the triangle that I was talking about in the last little bit, the Mithraic or the Mithraeum temple. That's crazy, isn't it? So this riverway or a brook would have flowed straight through the heart of that triangle. So there's more symbolic nature to that. So that means, like where the Bank of England is now, it would have been a currency that it would have flowed the river, goes all the way down here, and that's where it's got its meaning. So I just thought that was intriguing to show you that there's a temple to Mithras. It was moved to there after they found it in the 60s. Not that far. I'll show you a little image on the screen now so you can actually see it's not moved that far. But I just thought it was intriguing to show you that in that triangle there was a Mithras temple not far from the Bank of England. In this section, it's called London Unbuilt, I want to show you some buildings that weren't made in the City of London or London themselves, the proposed magazines you are. This is the Imperial Monument Halls and Tower, drawn up in 1904 for a site beside the Houses of Parliament. In 1910, the Strand magazine asked architect Adrian Berrington to render some designs for other Buckingham palaces. They didn't like what was designed and what is there now, so they asked him to come up with some ideas, and here are some designs that was proposed. Mr. David Walsh, a doctor in basically 1903, wrote to the Strand magazine and that we should build this monument in Hyde Park. The Green Bird, designed in 1990 for Battersea. Now yes, it does look like a huge dildo, and that was planned for the Battersea area. This is Selfridges in London, and in 1918 this was considered to go on top, and wow, would it have changed the silhouette and the footprint of this building with this huge tower on top. And this one was proposed Britannia statue on top of Greenwich Hill, roughly about 230 feet tall, I believe it would have been. So you can see that would have been one hell of a statue. Right guys, so you just saw some renderings of proposed buildings that were either sent into famous magazines at the time or just basically proposed for the City of London or the London boroughs. Now, I found on the Guardian newspaper site, this is other proposed buildings for the City of London and London, and I just wanted to show you them in a different format straight from the website, because obviously you'll see why. So if we just move this up a little bit, here is Westminster, and obviously the proposed building before that you saw for the first one would have been here. But have a look at this. This is a proposed airport for the Westminster. Now if I slide this across, you can see why I wanted to show you this. And this is the airport that was designed and was proposed to go right over the Thames, and the planes would land and take off from the roof. How crazy was that? This is definitely like something from a Fringe TV episode. So as you can see why I wanted to show you in this format, because it is just so much better. So you can see this is proposed airport for the Thames and Westminster. How wow was that? Right, what else have you got? So you can just see there, the airport on the Thames estuary isn't as original an idea as Boris Johnson might have you believe. A 1934 plan proposed the Thames itself hosts a new airport directly next to the Houses of Parliament, in between Westminster and Lambeth bridges. It was tall enough to accommodate passing ships and suitable for single propeller airports. That's wow, isn't it? This one's not too much. This is New Zealand High Commission. So this one isn't as wow as that. And then the Carlton Hotel. So that one's not like wow. This one is. I'll read it out first. In the 19th century, Sir Frederick William Trench, an MP and soldier, had an idea to commemorate the defeat of the French at the recent Battle of Trafalgar and the earlier Battle of the Nile. His idea, a pyramid at the top end of Whitehall, blueprint showed that it would have been taller than St Paul's Cathedral with 22 steps, one for each of the years the English and French had fought in those conflicts. Instead, the land was cleared and a statue of Nelson installed. The dream of London's ziggurat was over. So ziggurat is a temple, obviously, from Babylonia or Mesopotamia. So this is what you've got now. So you can just say this is the meetups for a lot of things that happen, like parades and, people protesting. They always seem to meet at Trafalgar. And this is what was proposed. How wow is that? Now, when people talk about the Tower of Babylon, how it's a spiral. Spiral does not work. In that era, it would have been designed like a ziggurat. So it would have been a stepped type of pyramid like this, not a spiral. And they have found designs in Babylon itself showing you it would have been this shape. So this is intriguing, isn't it? The ziggurat at the Trafalgar, that definitely changes the layout of this location. Just how wow is that? I find it so fascinating, that one. And this one was the London monorail nearly 50 years ago, with bus use falling and cars clogging up the streets. London briefly toyed with the idea of scrapping many of the buses entirely and replacing them with a monorail. I'm not going to sing it like that, it says. So you can see this is just a proposed idea for a monorail system in the city of London. How different would that have been for travel? So it's cool, just an idea of just showing you straight away like this with these ideas. Now, this is the Victorian skyscraper. After the Great Exhibition of 1851, there was a number of plans for what to do with the structure, originally located in Hyde Park, but subsequently moved to Sydenham, in which is now known as Crystal Palace Park. One idea, rather obtusely, was to build London's tallest skyscraper. Charles Burton drew up a plan for 1,000 feet high building, which was given the height of the South London location, which now make 100 foot higher than the Shard. There were to be vertical railways, and we might now call them elevators, to submit, and then a giant clock halfway up. So this is Crystal Palace, and this is what it could have looked like. Here we go. Are you ready? The difference if this was built. Wow. You can just see how that changes the location significantly. I just wish, some of these were built, because obviously modern architecture isn't half as good as the ancient, what people call Tartary or Antiquitech, or, different civilizations, giants building, you name it, the studies for everything, but the architecture isn't as good. That's just my opinion. These are beautiful, and I think that's it. So you can just see some intriguing ones: a skyscraper, a monorail, the ziggurat. Obviously that one's a bit that's just the Carlton Hotel, and then Westminster City Airport, which I think is a cool idea. But you can see some of the planes flying off and going into the could do with that, couldn't we? Right, guys. Right guys, I just want to briefly show you this. I thought it was intriguing because obviously I've made an old video on cemeteries. If you want to check that out, it's a really good, interesting video. It's called Monumental Cemeteries, The Dead Oh My, and in it I actually show you the definition of marble, which will actually blow you away. But I wanted to show you because of this. It's called the Egyptian Avenue and it's a part of Highgate Cemetery, and it's just surreal, wow. And I just thought, you know what, I thought because of some of the topics I've put into the video, I'll actually show you this. It's intriguing to me anyway. I don't know if it's macabre to some, but there's just something about it. There's something about these old cemeteries that I talked about in them other videos that intrigues me. So obviously, I just thought I'd show you this. I was going to go on a little bit more detail, but I found a wow. And that's going to be another video, so I have to finish this one first. It's just blew me out of the water what I've found. And as you can see, this is it in the 19th century. And you can see the avenue like dug out of ground. Or was it buried? So it's intriguing, isn't it? You got some surreal headstones. This one's Karl Marx. You also got an artist, a pop artist who died called Patrick Caulfield. His actual headstone just says dead. So he had a little bit of a humour. So I just wanted to finish with a few of these and then get on to something a little bit that I've covered in a very, very old video because it's a part of London and it's called the London Stone. This is its old location before it was restored and cleaned at the museum. People just walk past it every day. Not the foggiest on what it actually is. It didn't even look in it. It's a piece of London history. They covet it. And this is why we need to know what it actually is. And here is its nuclear location. It's just further down the street. It's not far. And you can see the pride that they have in this London stone. So it's significant to them. So that's why we need to know. So I'm going to show you a quick thing on the map, its location. It won't surprise you where it is, but it's more wow, and then I'll actually read a little bit out on it. Right guys, I'm going to show you quickly on the map where the actual location of the London Stone is kept. It's kept at 111 don't say 11s Cannon Street, and it's actually kept, yes, you got it because you can see it on the screen, the base of the pyramid that I was talking about before. Remember, there's the pyramid where the Mithraic temple is, with the Bank of England on top, the all-seeing eye. And the London Stone is kept at 111 Cannon Street, just there. You can just see it. And I believe in the olden days, before it was moved and cleaned, it was roughly near enough in the centre. So isn't that intriguing that the London Stone is kept in this triangle, this all-seeing eye, the heart of London? Just a coincidence there. Right guys, I've put it a bit big on the screen for you so you can actually read along if you wanted to pause it. It is huge. And I'll try and scroll it down. This is off the Museum London website, and it's intriguing. It really is about this London Stone, whatever you believe it is. And this is just their interpretation of 7 strange myths on the stone's origins, because no one really knows what it is. It's just been there forever. So here we go. It is claimed to be a druidic altar, a Roman milestone, and the magical heart of London. It's one of London's most ancient landmarks, but most people have never heard of it. Or if they have, they've heard of one of the strange legends that have sprouted up around it. Curator Emeritus John Clark, formerly curated the Museum of London's medieval collections, examines the myths and the colourful cast of characters who created them, from William Blake to an eccentric Welsh priest. So you can actually see when the building got bulldozed that it was originally housing, with the metal grill. It went to the Museum of London where it stayed for a little bit to get, cleaned up. So today, all that's left of the once famous London Stone is a block of limestone, currently resting in a glass case in the museum. It has sat for years behind an iron grill in the wall of 111 Cannon Street, a dilapidated 1960s office building now being demolished. There are a bronze plaque informing the passers-by its origins and purpose are unknown. Its origin is indeed mysterious, and whenever development of this site was proposed, the media worked up the mystery, not forgetting to mention the belief that if the stone was moved or destroyed, the future of London itself would be jeopardised. So that was one 19th century myth. If you go to my Odyssey, you'll find the old video on there. I think it's called New Jerusalem, and there's a few videos from the museum on that. Obviously, I can't show it on this. It's just a very old video, but you will enjoy it. However, much of what we think we know about the London Stone is untrue, or is at best guesswork, unsupported by any evidence. So there's a lot of myths, a lot of whatever it is. Obviously, someone will know what it is, and all we can do is theorise. So one myth that is stood in London since prehistoric times, the stone itself is Oolitic limestone of a type first brought to London for building and sculptural purposes in the Roman period, but also used in Saxon and medieval times. It originally stood towards the southern edge of the medieval Candlewick Street, now Cannon Street, opposite St Swithin's Church, called St Swithin at London Stone, by at least 1557. This would have placed it in front of the Great Roman Building, often identified as the Provincial Governor's Palace, that stood on the site now occupied by Cannon Street Station. It has been suggested that the stone was originally some sort of monument erected in the palace forecourt. Some have described it without any evidence as being Roman Milurium, the central milestone from which distances in the Roman province of Britain were measured. So basically, some are saying that everything that was measured in this country in Roman times, they measured it from that point. On the other hand, it also stands at the centre of the grid of new streets laid out by King Alfred, re-established London in 886, after Viking attacks had destroyed the original Saxon town, so it may have served some significant function for the late Saxon Londoners, and it must have been that period that received its singular name, Lundin Stone, London Stone meaning London Stone. So myth 2, it was an ancient altar used for druidic sacrifices. And the picks that they use so happen to have the little compass in and Stonehenge and different things. John Strype in 1720 updated edition of John Stowe's Survey of London seems to have been the first to offer the proposal that the London Stone was an object or monument of heathen worship erected by the Druids. Thus later London Stone was to play an important but not always consistent role in the visionary works of William Blake, prominent among them being its identification as an altar stone upon which Druids carried out bloody sacrifices, where Albions slept beneath the fatal tree and the Druids' golden knife rioted in human gore in offerings of human life. They groaned aloud on London Stone, they groaned aloud on Tyburn's Brook, Jerusalem, plate 27 to the Jews. There is no evidence for this, and London Stone, whatever its purpose, was certainly not erected before the Roman period. But like I said, no one knows absolutely nothing. Myth 3. Medieval kings and queens would visit the stone to ceremonially take control of London. So it seems a bit like this, how do you pronounce it? The Scone Stone. That was under the Queen's seat. I don't know if it's still there now. I know it got stolen, but there's so many myths around that also. So the London Stone entered national history briefly in the summer of 1450 when John or Jack Cade, there's a lot of Johns in there, leader of the Kentish rebellion against the corrupt government of Henry VI, entered London and, striking the London Stone with his sword, claimed to be lord of the city. There is no recorded precedent for this action, and contemporary chronicles were at a loss at its significance. Accounts even differ as to when it occurred, when Cade first entered the city on Friday, July the 3rd, or the following day. Unfortunately, we know the story best from Shakespeare, Henry VI, Part 2, in which Cade seats himself on the stone as his throne, issue proclamations, and passes swift judgment on the first unfortunate man to offend him. This is a great theatre, it's also fiction, but it's also led to believe that London Stone was traditionally used for such purposes. Shakespeare invented genius has a lot to answer for. Number 4, myth 4, London Stone has never until now been moved from its resting place. So you can see this old map London Stone, Cannon Street. So it's always been here. I think that would have been St Swithin's. So I'll just put that back up there for you to see. The current temporary shift to the Museum of London is nothing new. The stone is surprisingly migratory in the last few hundred years. It originally stood in Candlewick Street, Cannon Street, on the other side near the gutter facing the door of St Swithin's Church on the north side of the street. It seems to have been damaged by the Great Fire of London in 1666, which destroyed all the surrounding buildings. By 1720, what was left of the stone was protected by a small stone cupola built over it, and in 1742 it was moved as a traffic hazard to be placed still within its protective cupola on the north side of the street, the door of the new Wren Church of St Swithin. Two further moves in 1798 and 1820s placed it eventually where it was remained for more than 100 years, built in the middle of the church's south wall. So it's always been roughly near 111. It's been opposite the side of the street and backward and forward, so actually a bit more than I actually knew. So there is an image of St Swithin's, London Stone, Cannon Street, and there it is, right there. I don't want to click anything in case I lose it while I'm recording it. The Wren Church was gutted by bombing in the Second World War, but the walls were left standing and the London Stone remained in place in 1960 when it was moved to then Guildhall Museum, at that time housing the Royal Exchange. So it's not been moved, but it has by when you're reading this. It's funny when people forget to mention this, but obviously the Royal Exchange is not too far away, just round the corner near the Bank of England for safekeeping. After the demolition of the ruins and the completion of the new building on the site to the House of Bank of China, so it was actually Bank of China. In October 1962, the stone was placed in its specially constructed grille and glazed alcove in the wall that it occupied until recently. Myth: if the stone is moved or destroyed, London will fall. By the end of the 18th century, Romantic writers were beginning to suggest a relationship between the survival of the London Stone and the well-being of London itself. This recalled the legendary Palladium of Greek mythology, the statue of Pallas Athene that protected the city of Troy. Sir Thomas Pennant, in the History of London, published in the 1790s, commented it seems preserved like the Palladium of the city. The concept received a great boost from the apparent discovery of an ancient saying, so long as the stone of Brutus is safe, so long will London flourish. This first appeared in print in an article in Periodic Notes and Queries in 1862. Apparently no previous writer was aware of it. And they also mentioned the stone of Brutus. The article retails a supposed legend the London Stone was set up by Brutus of Troy, the first king of Britain. This notion is rooted in a much older piece of made-up history, the legend that London was first found by Brutus, leader of a group of Trojan colonists, as Troia Nova or New Troy. This story derived ultimately from the 12th century history of kings of Britain by Geoffrey of Monmouth, a pseudo-historian and arch-inventor of legends. The author of the notes to the Queries article claimed that Brutus had brought the base of the original statue of Pallas Athena from Troy and erected it as an altar in the temple of Diana in New Troy. So you can remember I mentioned Diana at the beginning, who that's reference to, and that the ancient kings of Britain had sworn their oaths upon it. Again, no other writers claim to know this tradition. The article was written under a pseudonym by the Reverend Richard Williams Morgan, Anglican priest, Welsh patriot bard, and later founder of his own ancient British church. For Morgan, the Welsh, who was superior to the English in every way, were directly descended from Brutus and the Trojan immigrants. There can be no doubt that the idea that legendary Brutus brought the stone from Troy and the saying about London's fate if the stone is lost or damaged are both his own inventions. Sadly, Morgan's fantasy is still quoted as if it was an authentic medieval proverb. Right, number 6. The stone has been protected by a long line of guardians. Obviously this is an old picture because it's no longer there, that building, neither is it in that facade. A modern myth has arisen that Lord Mayor of London serves as a custodian or guardian of the stone. It is an obvious concept, but belief in a guardian of the London stone does not seem ever to have existed in historical times, nor does the Corporation of the City of London list it as one of the Lord Mayor's official duties. In fact, until 1972, when London Stone was officially listed Grade 2 as a structure of special historical or historic interest, neither the corporation, which obviously run the City of London, nor the Lord Mayor seems to have taken any responsibility for the stone. Ownership of the stone itself has meanwhile passed with ownership of the land on which it stood for nearly 300 years, the site of St Swithin's Church. But in May 2006, a BBC reporter identified the manager of the Sportex Sports Group that he occupied the building in which the stone was housed as its custodian. The manager, Chris Cheek, was said to enjoy the idea he was the latest in a long line of people to be in charge of something so mysterious and ancient. It is not recorded if its responsibility passed to the manager of the branch of W.H. Smith's that later occupied the building. So you just take a pinch of salt. I'm reading this out just to give you a little bit of information that's on it. It's an intriguing topic, but like I said, nothing really is known about it. That's what the mysterious nature of it is intriguing as anything is like that. London Stone is the magical heart of London. In the late 19th century, the folklorist George Lawrence Gourmet put forward his opinion that London Stone was London's fetish stone. In early Aryan days, when a village was first established, a stone was set up to this stone, and the head of the man of the village made an offering once a year. The Lord Mayor was therefore the lineal descendant of the first village head man of London. The authoritative statement by a well-respected folklorist had a great influence on other writers. In 1937, another folklorist, Lewis Spence, published a book on legendary London, in which he claimed the Brutus legend as a traditional memory of an actual historic events. Authors interested in geomancy, the magic of the landscape, have identified the stone as marked stone on several ley lines. Others fear its removal from its original location has violated the integrity of the city's sacred geometry. These ideas have inspired episodes in several recent urban fantasy novels, stories with supernatural elements set in real-life world urban environments, from Charlie Fletcher's Stoneheart trilogy to Kate Griffin's The Midnight Mayor. In the novel Kraken by award-winning China Miéville, London Stone is the beating heart of London, guarded by a cabal of London mancers. Oh, truth in plain sight, hidden in books. Considering no one wants to know what this stone is, it seems to be rather protected. What can we learn from these myths? An admission that we don't know the origin of the London Stone and probably never will satisfy nobody. Hence the apparent desire for a mythology that lends it great antiquity and even a greater symbolic role. The significance of London Stone and the importance of taking measures for its preservance depend not only on its actual age and origins, but the reputation it has acquired over the years since. So, considering it's nothing this stone, and this person's actually restored it, why restore a stone that has no significance? Because it is, we just don't know it. Could it be part of a specific temple or building from antiquity? That's just what my thoughts are. It's just an intriguing topic, so hopefully you've just learnt that little bit on the London Stone. So the Corporation of London don't just have the fingers in the pies of the city. They also control and own and run the bridges that go into that said city too. Here's one of the most famous, obviously the London Bridge, how it was in olden times. The modern ones with the solar panels on. You name it, the major bridges going into the City of London are controlled by the Bridge House Estates. And I'll show you the logo in a minute, and I'll also just show you a little bit behind the scenes in the museum. There is the logo there. Isn't it? Like, when you look at that logo, it reminds you of so much. And I've got a theory onto what that actually represents, and I'll show you that after I show you the rest of the stuff. But there's the mark of the Bridge House Estate. It'll be found on all the bridges and property that the company own. So they're basically just a part of the corporation. Coming up, you'll actually see the side by side with the City of London. Here you go. There's the flag of the City of London next to the Bridge House Estates, because it's just one and the same entity. Again, it's intriguing because we know they love to use the symbols, and it's always been hidden in plain sight. Here you go, Corporation of London, Southwark Bridge, rebuilt and maintained without burden upon public funds out of the monies derived from the Bridge House Estate. It's really, it gets a lot of money too. So here we go, I'll also show you a bit in the museum now. Right guys, as I was just saying, I'll just show you a little bit behind the scenes of the Bridge House Estates, and this is like a museum display thing that they have going. As you can see, explore, and it has the Bridge House Estate Trust logo, sigil or emblem or logo if you want to call it that. So obviously the Bridge House Estates, a temporary exhibition, explores the story of the Bridge House Estates and its mysterious bridge mark that's found all around London and beyond. The interactive experience inspires visitors to then explore London to find the marks and share their discoveries. So there you have the Bridge House Estates, discover the secrets of London's mysterious symbol. And then we have just a bit of flash stuff here. You can just see just how many there is, and obviously they won't be showing you everyone, but you can see. So hopefully you're not having a fit at the flicking images, but you can just see how and the extent of this symbol. So obviously, are you ready to discover the secrets of London's mysterious symbol? So they actually playing on it. I'm not going to show you everyone, but I just want to just show you how these guys actually showing you hidden in plain sight. So there you go. I'll try and read this one out for you. It says Leborn. It says the Bridge House mark or bridge mark has been the symbol of the Bridge House Estate for centuries. Its origins are hidden in the midst of time, but the mark first appears scribbled onto maps and plans in the 15th century. William Leborn, surveyor of the city, gave the mark its final shape in the late 1600s. The symbol might have had its origin in masons or carpenters. Oh, what a surprise! which the workers marked the estate's property. A few strokes with an axe or carved out with a knife. It indicated the materials reserved for the repairs of the London Bridge. There are other theories linking it even further back in time to the ancient Chi Rho symbol of the early Christian church and to the Roman Empire, and you'll see they ain't wrong there, and I'll show you that at the end. So as you can see, it looks like an arc, doesn't it? Tolley Street. The origins of the London's Bridge House Estate lie in another one of London's important and famous river crossings, London Bridge. After centuries of building, rebuilding and changing responsibilities for the bridge, King Edward issued a royal charter with the decree in 1282. He established the Bridge House Estates. He put it in charge of the management, the repair, the financing, and if necessary, the rebuilding of London Bridge. Until 1841, its main offices stood on Tooley Street, approximately where Hayes Gallery is now, opposite London Bridge Station. The area east of London Bridge and adjacent to St Olave's Church were busy with workshops, stores, warehouses, courtyards, and even inns and taverns. So as you can see, it's a nice exhibition they've got, just showing you the history of the mark. So if you actually want to look at this yourself, it's www.mrcreativestudio.co.uk, Workbridge House Estates. So as you can see, all around London and beyond, so you can just see how much the marks are. See, we keep adding and taking away. And obviously London Bridge got taken down and sold to, I believe it's in Arizona. So you can just see the extent of this mark. It just intrigues me so much because you just don't see these things like the Maiden's Mark, the anonymous lady from the beginning. You just don't see it. What else are we not seeing? Then there you go, Arizona, just showing you the other bridge. So it's an interactive experience, showing you the marks, and you can go out and look for them yourself. So there you go, guys. I just thought to give you a quick look at this Bridge House Estate Trust logo. Right, guys, thank you for basically your time on this long video. I've got a little bit more that I just want to show you, but not that much. Thank you. Is it just me, or does the Bridge Trust logo remind you of the sigil of Lucifer? It may be it's just the X and the pyramid type of thing, but it does seem rather similar. But what I wanted to get to and allude to before, look at the Bridge Trust logo. Now look at the Globus Crucica. Obviously that's tied to the Vatican. It means the orb and the cross, but obviously regality. Look, in the Bridge House Trust logo, it has the Globus Crucica plus the pyramid. Is that combination the City of London Corporation and the Crown together, or the church working in tandem? If you put the Bridge House Trust logo, it does fit over St. Peter's Basilica. Is that just a coincidence? It's just intriguing, isn't it? Just think about it. You got the Globus Crucica, the orb and the cross, and then you have the Bridge House Trust logo, which incorporates, it seems, that triangle, the all-seeing eye near the Bank of England, together with the Globus Crucica. It's like a coming together, a partnership, like a cooperation. If we cooperate with each other, sounds a bit like cooperation. And this is a gift that the Pope gave the Queen when she came out to visit a few years ago. And as you can see, it's a orb and cross, the Globus Crucica, the same symbol. But what connects the Vatican together with Rome? And it's at 11 again, guys. The City of London is 2.9 kilometres across. 9 add 2 equals 11. How big is the Vatican? It says here the size of the Vatican is about 110 acres. Could have picked something else, but here they've chosen 110 acres, aka 11. So there's a connection for me that I've not also shown already, that the Vatican and the City of London are both 11s. Wonder why. I'm just blown away by that, guys. Right, this is going to be the last segment because I've been going for far too long, and I can always add to this in future videos. Now, the Crown Corporation, or the Corporation of London, whatever way you want to call them, who run London, the City of London, have a person in regard to in contact with the Parliament and leaders. They are called the Remembrancer. Now here I'll put an image of what the Remembrancer was. I think this is an old one. Anyway, the city's Remembrancer is one of the city's traditional offices and dates from the Queen Elizabeth I. The office holder is one of the city's law officers, as well as being a parliamentary agent and its head of protocol. The Remembrancer is charged with maintaining and enhancing the city's status and ensuring that its establishment rights are safeguarded. As long as 1685, an order was made for the Remembrancer to continue to attend Parliament and the offices of Secretaries of the State daily, and acquaint the Lord Mayor with public affairs and other businesses transacted here or there relating to the city. In the contemporary context, this work encompasses day-to-day contact with officials in government departments responsible for developing government policy, the drafting, the promotion and legislation, and responsibility for the relations of both houses of Parliament and their committees, including briefings for debates in which the City Corporation or its associated bodies have an interest. So basically, they're influencing and making sure the City of London get looked after in the Houses of Parliament and the Houses of Lords. And it's crazy. They even have lobbyists. We heard the term lobbyists. And here's the corporation's lobbyists, just parading with Gog and Magog, like you do. So you can see the significance of this corporation, the Remembrancer and the lobbyists. It's a crazy world. It's an old-time world, old world order. People always talk about the new world order. It's not, it's just the old world order. There's just rebrands. And these Remembrancer, basically stands in the Houses of Parliament, the Houses of Lords, making sure that the City of London get taken care of. Screw us. They look after their own rights, and it's a little corporation. Well, it's not a little corporation, but it's a corporation of a little so-called town, a square mile it's known as, and look at the influence that it has. Oh, not over just the Houses of Parliament and Lords, but also us. So guys, I'm going to leave it there because obviously I could keep going. I've not even done my thoughts yet, so this could be a part one of sorts because there is a lot of information out there and your time is precious.
Yeah, they call me the black sheep. You know they call me the black sheep.
Hello and welcome. Right, guys. Firstly, I want to say a big thank you to everyone that's, messaged, supported me. It's just humbling. I never get tired of it because it's overwhelming. It's just wow. So thank you to the people that supported me on Buy Me a Coffee. I've just not long started it. People were emailing, messaging. How can we help? I will be honest, guys. My pride, my ego refuse it. I believe it should be free, and I didn't want to take no donations or nothing. But people, honestly, you want the amount of people that were messaging me. So, you know what? I've done it. It's there. I'm not going to be one of those channels that it puts in the chat when we premiere. I'm just going to mention it at the beginning, etc. And if people want to donate, I've put it at the lowest setting. Please do. Everything helps. Like I said, I'm not ashamed to say I've got an ego. I've got pride, and that's what stopped me from doing it in the first place. But people just want to help in any way what they can, and that is the easiest way. So I bit the bullet, as they say, and I've started it from last week or the last video. What's it, the video? I can't remember. I've just not long started it, so it'll be in the video description, title description down below. Right, onwards and onwards. So guys, if anyone's new, this bit's just my thought section where I have a little roundup. Normally I can go for a half an hour to an hour, but because the video's long enough as it is, I want to keep it short and sweet so you guys are not comatose. For anyone that's fell asleep, because people do use me to go to sleep too, and I don't, honestly, it's so funny. I don't get offended. You know what I mean? I'm honoured that people just want to watch, and if I can help with the research or getting someone to sleep, I'm here. At least I'm going to sleep. For any of the beautiful ladies out there who use me to go to sleep too, think of me. I'm keeping it clean, guys. So the video was just on the City of London, on a little bit of the London around it, and I wanted to put stuff in it that maybe you've not seen before, but not what you would expect. You know what I mean? A lot of you have seen a lot of videos on the Crown Corporate or the Corporation of London, blah, blah, and it's this. I wanted to do something different. Maybe you could call it like a tourist video, but just show you something. I mean, for anyone that lives in London or would go to London to think, I saw that on Paul. Let me see if I can find it because it's intriguing, or use me as a spark or, for other research. People have asking what this is. It's just a copper cup. I used to have a copper cup last time, but it disappeared. And it was my birthday in May. And strangely enough, another one appeared with no name. So I wonder who took it. But they must have felt guilty. So I've got another copper cup back. So, back on the video. So I learned a lot in this video. And, I just wanted to make it I've watched that. That's Paul's. That's a What the Flock TV video because we all have our flair, and this is how we make it. And I don't want to make the same stuff all the time. And there's a lot of stuff I missed out in this because how long do you want me to make the video? If I keep adding, I'm terrible as it is at myself. I get excited like a school kid. I'm like, oh God, that's intriguing. Can I show the guy? I like talk to myself. I'm like, can I show the guys this? no, it's getting long enough as it is. Oh, come on, please, Paul, please. And I'm going, you know what I mean? So that's the type of fighter that I have daily, making a video. Then I put it in the video and I'm like, oh my God, it's like 3 hours long now. What can I do? So it's intriguing. So the main points of the video that we talk about are the Bank of England. We briefly look inside it. We show you a brief history of it, banking notes, etc., and different things. We talk about the 12 livery companies, which are like guilds, like the grocers, the drapers. We find out where Amat 6s and 7s came from, because they have a ranking system, and number 6 and 7 were going to bloodshed, so they alternate it each year. So that's where that saying comes from, which I didn't know, which blew my mind. Where's this gone? So then we went in to look at the bank, and we know it's a central bank. No matter what, if they want to change their minds and say, oh, it's not now anymore, we got brought, you know, we know it's not. And some of the things that's in the bank, some of the art, some of the mosaics that I wanted to show you. I mean, just look, not long ago I made a video about the Caduceus. I showed you one on the doors, I showed you one in it, but I didn't find at the time the Caduceus that I showed you in the video, where it had the head, the wings at the top, and it also had the head and wings at the bottom. That blew my mind. It blew my friend Ryder. If you're not checked Ryder's channel out, it's called Raised with Giants. If you remember, I'll put a link in the description with the other stuff that I've mentioned. He's not scared to talk about any topic. Like I said, I don't recommend many channels, because people say, well, you recommend and they're not this and they're not that. You know, we don't like every video, everything's done, but we appreciate people who are like-minded. And I'm not long did a video with Ryder, and then he's got the Janice bug now and the 11 bug. So, you know, more the merrier, more research is done on this, and we can get to the bottom of it. These people will, no doubt, because, you know, the good people. And I include my friend on Twitter, Analog, Waking Up with Analog, another shout out. Great researcher, helps me by, you know, showing stuff I didn't find on Janos. And if you ever use the stuff in the video, I will mention it, because these people need the kudos. So these people will surpass me for sure. Very clever people. But, you know, we're a community, and this is how we learn. This is how we, you know, this is what I love about it, when we all share. So that bit just blew me away, because if you remember my old video about the connection, where I integrated that with the vocal cord video, but if you've not watched it, it's talking about how we used to have a tail, how they use the theory of evolution to hide the fact we have a tail and what it was used for. You get hints from Avatar in it, but we had a tail, you can see it, and I recommend that video to watch as well. It'll blow your mind. And inside that, it's a sacred area. It's actually called the sacrum and the sacral. And all these sacred areas, how not only do you procreate, but obviously it's the base of the Kundalini for people who believe in that. And that is basically the Caduceus. And the Anos, the Janos, is where Mount Meru is. I've showed you that in the video. And then you had the pineal gland, which is also called Janos, at the top of the staff with the wings. You had the dual nature of it, and you had the two hemispheres in regard to the brain. So that's intriguing. If you hear anyone shouting, it's just people outside, workmen or something. So I'm not stopping. I've done a few. It seems any time I want to record, it's like New Orleans marching band or a funeral out. It's a but again, we just have a laugh with it. So that intrigued me when I saw that, and I sent that Ryder the other day, and it blew his mind. Then you get to the Janus mosaic, and they used the Montague. What was his name? Now begin with the P, didn't he? The old governor at the time, who's also associated with helping funneling and shading gold from the Nazis. So, you know, good understanding people. And please don't message all we know about that. Guys, I've researched, you know, I do see quite a lot. You just like when you say one word and there's people that literally take it for granted. I'm just showing you what they're saying. I make videos and just what I see. It's not what I believe. If I see something and it's a cat, I'll show you a picture if it's a cat, and people might not believe it. You know what I mean? So that type of thing. That's what people just seem to lack a discernment. Just enjoy the video, enjoy seeing something different. So you had him, and his face being used for the Janos statue. I'm like, that's egotistical, and it's like, oh well, I didn't really know. Come on, guys. And then above in the head, I noticed the star constellation. Well, I found a video, obviously I can't put it in here, and it was from the Bank of England stating that the 12 stars in it, and I thought, oh no, the matches, the constellation, the livery companies, the zodiac. What could it be? And she said it's the plough. She named it the plough, and then she named the Southern Cross. So that was intriguing to me. So I quickly looked into it, and I'm not even a beginner in it. You know, I need to look into astrology more. I need to look at the stars, because obviously these use them as signaling. You know, when a star constellation hits a certain location, that's when they do some of their rituals. And I found out in an ancient text that this plough was also known as the Circle of Time, and the Southern Cross. I knew from another video that the major stars in it were red, so it was seen as red. So you got in the St. George's flag, the symbol of the Bank and City of London, is the St. George's flag, which they got from Genoa, where Janos was basically, they're named after Genoa. Come on. So you can see the connection between banking, and I showed you Janos not only showed humans how to build walls, laws, he invented crowns. It doesn't specific talk about if it a crown or crowning money, but he's also tied to money as well. So you can see my point of view is when I see these connections, I'm going to tell you, if people don't like them, it's up to you. It's just perspective and me piecing together my research. It's all about opinions. So when you're seeing this stuff, Janos in the Bank of England and the seriousness of the Bank of England, and they're talking about how it's a red cross and a circle, you put that in together, and it is the flag of St. George, which is St. George is even at the lobby in it as soon as you go in, I believe. I'm not quite sure, so if I'm wrong, but it is there. I showed a picture of it, so wherever it is, because there's a few doors in there, and I keep meaning to go on a tour of there. That would be cool to do. So that is a bit of information that wowed me. Could that be the origin? And that made me think, right, I'm going to start looking into the star a bit more, what the cult, what hidden information I can find on that. I didn't want to put it in this video because, you know, it takes away from the London. So the plough, that circle of time, I'm going to look into that a bit more to see Pleiades and stuff, what comes from that, because it's important to them. And it's wow, guys, because I've just connected the English flag from Genoa, which that was their flag first. England paid the right. So we're talking about the St. George's flag connected to all this, and it stems from Janos. Wow. What can I say? So that intrigued me a hell of a lot from the mosaic. But like I said, I don't want to lose myself and start talking about other things. So that's why I just kept it short and sweet and that. So we talked about that. We talked about how the Bank of England, the history, how it got renovated, how it used to have another bank rivaling it called the South Sea Company, who was set up by the two St. Johns, one of them the Chancellor of Exchequer, and I think the Chancellor of Exchequer lives at number 11 Downing Street. I don't know if they did in that time, you know what I mean, but they do now. Two St. Johns. John is derivative of Janos. It's also the patron saints of Freemasonry, it shows you. And they set up the company to deal in slaves, to raise money, to pay for wars, or whatever they wanted to use the money for. Again, I didn't know that about South Sea Company, so that blew me away. And again, I didn't want to delve into that too much. It's like 1 hour, 45 minutes, and I can't remember what I've put in it. It's just crazy, isn't it? So then we'll also talk about London. I didn't talk about the flag too much. I've talked it briefly, but from their point of view, they say that sword is the one that beheaded St. Paul. There's some other myths about it. But we know the flag comes from Genoa now, and we know the link to Janos. Genoa, patron saint is St. George. The first bank, capitalism, Western capitalism started there. So, this little wee place, that's why I said to you, check out the Genoa videos, Genoa Conundrum, etc., and the Monumental Cemeteries one, because it answers a lot of questions. But I always see people posting about, oh, look at these marble statues, too real, it's like they've been frozen. And I've done a video on that ages ago, and the etymology, it said petrified or spiritually dead. That's wow. But because I'm myself, and not other channels, people seem to quote other channels, and I just get left, you know. But hey, I'd rather be who I am and than other people. So that intrigued me too. And then we had Augusta, another name for London. We've had Londinium, different things. We've had Lindane, Welsh pool, Welsh for the pool. And then we had Llandian, basically referring to how there was a temple of Diana under St. Paul's. And Diana's, again, associated with Janos. So you can see this intriguing nature. Let me just get a drink. It's a copper cup, just with a black lacquer. People have been asking. My other one got stolen, or something happened to it. It disappeared. And then for my birthday, they must have heard me saying, and it disappeared with no name. So, thank you. So that's an intriguing, again, associations. Doesn't mean it's fact, just means it's associations. So then we talked about the South Sea Company, how they were funded and founded January, and it added up. Did it add up to 11? It's crazy. And then other stuff like weird, like Space Odyssey in it. I just thought it was too intriguing not to put in it, that how they nearly had a white one instead of black, and it went then to be the Queen's Jubilee crown thing engraved in it. That was just too weird. I had to include that. And then I've talked about the flag and different things, and I always meaning to look into the order of the dragons, because obviously we had the dragon markers. And do you know which flag is Sphinx or dragons or whatever you want to call them? But they're from the heraldry of it, the animals, they are related, they do stem from it. It's just too intriguing not to compare it. And since I've been making videos, I've been telling people Genoa to Geneva to London. That's the trio of how the banking system got set up, and it stems from Genoa. The first people to set up capitalism. In what form? Intriguing. Then we look at other links to the corporation, in the sense of they have their own police force, they have their own cells, police cells, and they manage the bridges that come into London, and it's the Bridge House Trust. We look at their logo, it resembles Lucifer's sigil. And again, it's like, I'm not saying all people say Lucifer's not actually evil. I don't have to keep saying things like this for people. I'm just saying it looks like Lucifer's symbol. Then obviously it looks like the Globus Crucica. So it's like the global crucica, the circle, which if you turn upside down, I think it's a symbol for Venus. Again, it's associated with the morning star. But you had the Globus Crucica, so the circle and the cross. And that also is a part of the symbol. And the part of the symbol does look like the pyramid, the all-seeing eye, which the Bank of England is a part of. That's wow to me how it's a triangle. And it had the eye bit at the top. There could be nothing to it. It just could be a resemblance. Or could it be the fact it's done by design? It's just so intriguing. And like I said, I didn't want to go too much and talk in my thoughts, my chats. I just wanted to basically say thank you for everyone that supported me with heartwarming good messages. The people that supported me on buy me a coffee or buy me a toupee, as I've called. And the people who just want to share my work. So I do appreciate it, and I do need people to share my channel. I'm trying to get me. Yeah, no, I'm not getting my name out there, but I just want to put my point of view because, you know, I believe, you know, it has a lot to do with what's going on at the minute. Obviously, I research Giannis, but I don't just research Giannis. You can check the videos out. If anyone's new, please do. I've recommended 3 or 4 videos on this. Other people's channel, Riders, is a good one to watch. He interviews different people. Some of you already know him. So it's just intriguing, especially then when you tie together, like the London measures 11. It comes up to 11. It's like, am I seeing this? Is this right? And how many coincidences does it not take for it something to be? It's done by design. Remember, the City of London is a corporation, but it got surrounded by, I can't remember what king. He had enough, and he built walls all the way around it, and built the city of Westminster. Was it William the Conqueror? I'm not quite sure. I might be wrong, but that's what happened, and it's somehow added to 11, just like the Vatican adds to 11. I've not found an 11 yet in regard to Washington DC, but if that did happen, that would be the super wow. But I believe there's more in regard to, it's not just the Vatican, London and Washington DC. I think there's another 1 or 2 in it. But I just want to make you guys, you know, an intriguing video. The library companies, the 12 of them, the symbol that they use on their properties. You have the bank, the bridge symbol. You have the cross and the circle making the flag of England, the City of London. So there's a lot in this, and hopefully you guys, you know, you appreciate the hard work I've put in. I know you do, because you say so. And long may it continue. Get the music done in at the back. So hopefully you guys, you've enjoyed this. You know, I just wanted to keep this the thoughts, you know, short because the video is so long, and it feels like I need to say I'm back, but I'm not. I've not been away. I'm just it just takes too long. I'm getting slower. I must be. You know, I don't want to use excuses, but you know what I mean. I just do videos. I'm making them in my own speed now, and I'm gonna mix them up. I want to make some short ones, medium ones, long ones, just how I feel at the time. And guys, please give yourself a pat on the back. I'm humbled by the support. I'll see you in the chat. I could not do this without you. You know, we need to address, we all have an ego, we all have pride. Let's just be honest with ourselves in regard to anything, and we'll be better as a community if we did. So guys, stay safe, always wear a smile, and I'll see you in the chat, guys. Take care. And yes, I've missed loads out for anyone, but you know what I mean, how much you put in a video? There's other stuff that you can watch in the meantime from your older stuff. Right guys, take care. Bye.